Zenzele shares is the shares that were distributed back in 2010, and this was given to the retailers, partners, and some of the employees in SAB. And SAB, for those who do not know, it is a company that gives us beer. So they are coming again in May to give us a chance to buy those shares. Those shares will be listed in JSE. So you have an opportunity now to buy those shares, and then it is estimated that it will cost 40 Rand per share, and it is open for everyone to buy. This is a B-BBEE JSE listing, and which will give everyone a fair chance to accumulate money. Now think about it. For those who spend 100 Rand, they gained 77,000, around 77,000. That's huge. So if you are into creating generational wealth, this is an opportunity for you to just buy. I'll play you a video from SAB announcing this great news. So this is a B-BBEE.
Together, we have achieved more. Launched in 2010 and with a total value of almost 13.05 billion rand. SAB Zenzele facilitated the biggest B-BBEE FMCG payout in South African history. To truly empower the partners, staff, retailers, and beneficiaries of the SAB Foundation to realize their dreams. The time has come to extend that opportunity to our fellow South Africans. It's a new dawn and a new decade, and it's time for a Zen-celebration. Celebrating where we are going and paving the way for our future and our future generations. Hip hip Kabili! Something new and exciting is on the horizon. Introducing SAB Zenzele Kabili, a new scheme for new dreams and ownership for all. Listed on the B-BBEE segment of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and valued at 5.4 billion rand in global AB InBev shares for all shareholders. It's set to be our biggest success yet. And it's in your hands to make it happen. Even though we are unable to come together, we are united apart and committed to you and your right to vote. United, we all prosper. And if you can dream it, we'll help you do it. We look forward to another successful decade together.
My name is Gugulethu Mfuphi, and it gives me great pleasure to be your host today on behalf of SAB. Today, we are here virtually to celebrate the success of SAB Zenzele as a share scheme, which has culminated in one of the biggest payouts in South African history. But we also choose to look towards the future of what SAB has in store in terms of value for shareholders. Are you ready for a phenomenal ride? Well, created with the intention of generating sustainable ownership and economic wealth opportunities, the SAB Zenzele B-BBEE deal transferred ownership of SAB shares to more than 40,000 shareholders. Since its inception in 2010, SAB Zenzele has generated 9.71 billion rand in net value and dispersed 3.34 billion rand in dividend payouts to shareholders, making the total value of SAB Zenzele almost 13.05 billion. Now, I don't know if you know your maths or your numbers correctly, but this does make it the biggest B-BBEE FMCG payout in South African history. In April 2020, SAB Zenzele paid out a special dividend of 77.4% to assist its shareholders with the financial distress and the loss of income experienced during the global pandemic. Let's take a look at how the scheme truly empowered the lives of one of its retail shareholders.
Sanbonani, molweni, dumelang, absheni. Igama lam nguFlorence wakwaKhumalo, ngibuya eDaveyton. Igama lendawo yami Long Walk Sport Bar kwaKhumalo. One day my sales reps come on my place and told me about Zenzele. So I didn't understand that, and then told me about this, and then I tried to put my money, and I was afraid because I'm not sure what is Zenzele, and then she explained everything, and then I tried to join. Ngifumene imali, mangifumana imali yokuqala ngiye ngajabula kakhulu. Ngabona ukuthi ukutshala kubalulekile. My business was closed, and then that money helps me a lot to pay my debt. Even the SAB I pay with that money, the school fees I pay, and then I change even the car I use to deliver my stock. I try to change the cars. Ingisiza kakhulu imali yezenzele ngoba umntwana wami engasafuni ukuya esikolweni ethi mama awunayo imali, so imali yokuqala engenile yiyo engisize kakhulu. Angifuni ukucamba mali, yiyo yangisiza ngafundisa umntwana wami wafunda, ngatshintsha nemoto zami. So iphupho lami ngiyalibona as umuntu othengisa utshwala ukuthi izenzele ingisize kakhulu. Ndiyayivuyela into endenzele yona inhle. Ndiva kunezenzele kabili ezawungena, izenzele kabili izawungena soon. Ndizimisela ukujoyina nakuyo izenzele kabili ngoba ngincedakele kakhulu. So ngifuna ukuvota bese ngiyangena nakuyo kakhulu. Ngizovota for izenzele kabili ngoba isihlahla engiyasitshala sasisincane, sakhula namhlanje sikhulu. Ngisibonile singincedile kakhulu ngokufundisa, ngokuthenga, ngokwakhela umamindlu ekhaya ngayo yona le mali yezenzele. Abanye abantu izenzele bayibone ngoba sesinika imali eningi. Thina siye sahlala singazi ukuthi kunemali ezayo, sayifumana incinci kodwa sahlala. Bathe mabeyibona ithi gqi ininzi imali, babona abantu ukuthi nabo mabajoyine, basho ukuthi kuvalekile. Yes, I'm gonna vote for Zenzele Kabili, and I encourage everybody to vote for Zenzele Kabili because it helps a lot.
SAB Zenzele Kabili, coming in May 2021.
What a phenomenal story, right? That's Florence Khumalo, who is just one of the shareholders who's been able to make her dreams come true with the contribution of SAB Zenzele. And at the culmination of the scheme this year, every shareholder will have the opportunity to make a decision on what they choose to do with their remaining entitlement. But I think something that's so pertinent that Florence mentioned is the long-term strategy and growth that we witness from this kind of investment, right? She mentioned the analogy of a tree. Planting a seed and waiting for yourself to actually reap the fruits of that particular investment over the years to really change and shape the lives of the people close to her. Well, for those South Africans who are invested in SAB Zenzele, retail shareholders specifically, there are 3 options that are available to you. Now, they can either choose to exchange their shares for AB InBev shares, sell their shares for cash, or have the exciting opportunity to reinvest a portion of their payout in a brand new empowerment share scheme. Zenzele, or SAB Zenzele, has been one of the country's most successful empowerment schemes, creating tangible wealth for its 3 groups of shareholders. Beneficiaries of the scheme include the SAB Zenzele Employee Trust, which holds shares for the benefit of SAB employees, SAB Zenzele Holdings, which holds shares for the benefit of qualifying beer retailers, and the SAB Foundation Trust, which supports entrepreneurship projects to benefit rural communities. And some of these are entrepreneurs that many of us might be aware of and are able to see more details on available on the website. What's also truly inspiring is to see what has been achieved and the economic growth that it has contributed to our country. And continuing this legacy, something new and exciting is certainly brewing. Well, a new scheme with new dreams and ownership for all, SAB Zenzele Kabili, will be listed on the B-BBEE segment of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and is set to be SAB's biggest success yet, owning 5.4 billion rand in global AB InBev shares for all its shareholders. Now, to help us understand a lot more about this and to not only reflect on the past decade regarding the success of SAB Zenzele, but also to tell us where we're headed and share some of the excitement and more details about SAB Zenzele Kabili, the brand new empowerment share scheme launching in this month of May 2021. Please put your virtual hands together. We accept applause on this platform as we welcome our first speaker for today, the Vice President of Finance, Legal and Corporate Affairs for the rest of Africa for the AB InBev Africa Zone, Richard Rivet Karnak. A very good morning to Richard as he makes his way to stage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Rivet Karnak, and I'm the Vice President of Finance, Legal and Corporate Affairs for the rest of Africa for the AB InBev Africa Zone. Thank you very much for joining us today at this exciting event. We are really thrilled to have you all with us. Today really is a celebration for us at SAB because we're coming to the end of a 10-year journey with SAB Zenzele, a journey that has been remarkably successful for us as a company in South Africa. I'm incredibly inspired and proud of what we've been able to achieve with SAB Zenzele as the biggest B-BBEE transaction in South African FMCG history. There are over 40,000 South African families who have benefited from SAB Zenzele, a truly broad-based empowerment scheme that has really created tangible value, having generated 9.7 billion rand in net value and having been able to distribute it to people like Florence Khumalo and Maria Nkosi, who are two of our partners and shareholders. Due to the value that they have both received, they have been able to reinvest in their businesses, support their families during the global pandemic, afford their children an education, and even buy bigger trucks to be able to transport their stock and improve their own businesses. As we close the SAB Zenzele chapter, we look forward to bringing you a brand new empowerment scheme called SAB Zenzele Kabili. Once again, the beneficiaries of the SAB Zenzele Kabili scheme are our employees, retailers, and the SAB Foundation, which supports entrepreneurship projects to benefit rural communities. SAB is proud to have our employees, retailers, and SAB Foundation as partners in our business. They are true owners within our business and will hopefully share in our ongoing success. We are stronger together, and we look forward to continuing sharing this journey with you in the years to come. We are proud to call South Africa home, and we hope to continue playing a role in making it the wonderful country that it is. Once again, thank you for being here virtually to share this special occasion with us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your morning with us today. Thank you.
Sharing some of those details with us. Now, he won't go too far away. He will be joining us as well in a moment to share in some of the questions that might come up from many of you as our participants who we want you to engage with us here today. A reminder about the chat service. Please do make use of it in addressing any of your questions and being clear as to who you are addressing it to, but also maybe also bearing in mind that should any questions come up during the presentation this morning, to be mindful of any further questions or insight that you'd like to receive. But to help share some more information on SAB Zenzele and Zenzele Kabili as to what this launch entails and how it hopes to change the lives of many South Africans, it now gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage the chairman of SAB Zenzele Holdings, Dr. Penuel Maduna, and Company Secretary of SAB and the AB InBev Africa Zone, Duncan Pask. Dr. Maduna and Duncan will be joining me on stage, and Richard will also make a comeback for us to really get some insight as to how far we've come with SAB Zenzele and where we're headed with Zenzele Kabili. Well, as you can tell, I've got company with me on stage, and certainly not alone. And I must tell you that whilst we know that you are present with us virtually, we miss the energy and the vibe that we'd often share with you as our audience members, touring across the country and really gaining some insight with you. But that doesn't mean that you need to be quiet on the other side of our screens. Please do keep your questions coming in, and of course your feedback, as we'll hear from the various representatives giving us some insight today. Well, gentlemen, let's get into the conversation for today and really try to get some clarity, perhaps by reviewing the journey that we've walked. And Dr. Maduna, I'd like to start off with you. As the chairman, you have been certainly entrenched in the rollout of SAB Zenzele right from its initial launch back in 2020. Perhaps give us some insight as you reflect on this journey as to what has actually made this particular empowerment scheme so successful.
For me personally, the journey has been a great one. The aim that we had at the very outset, and that was to bring on board the various people who were selling SAB's products in the townships, etc., to bring them on board as shareholders in the company was more than achieved. People would be expected to put down 100 rand, and over 10 years, they would come out with 77,000 rand. A phenomenal growth by any measure. This was great. But more than that, we also made sure that whoever participated in the scheme was appropriately licensed. So whereas the shebeens, as they were called, you know, your township speakeasies,
Yes.
Had been illegal businesses. Here you were now talking about legal businesses, properly licensed by government, and needless to say, participating in the expansion of the tax pool in the country, because they would also pay tax as businesses now, and they would employ more young people wherever they were operating. So in other words, the beneficiary base was expanded. Suddenly you have a job not far from home where our products are sold. You get an income and you pay personal income tax, and the business also pays tax. So the benefit was much wider, right? And so here am I, very happy indeed that we've come thus far.
Yeah.
It's not been an easy period in the economy, but nonetheless, here we are now with people who yesteryear didn't know what a share was, who are now shareholders in a big entity. And pretty soon when we launch SAB Zenzele Kabili in a matter of 2-3 weeks,
Yes.
they will become shareholders in the largest beer-making entity, AB InBev. And that's a great achievement.
A significant achievement. And I'm
Absolutely.
really excited by the fact that you mentioned how we're not only changing the mindset
Yes.
of investors and business owners, but really doing great work for the overall community and the country itself. I'm tempted to tease you and ask you if you invested yourself back in 2010?
No. In fact, one of the conditions was that the board should not have any personal interest in the company. So we were truly independent, right? But With SAB Zenzele Kabili, maybe those opportunities are going to become available to whoever wants to park some money in AB InBev shares.
Exactly,
That's
as
it,
it will
yeah.
be publicly available on
Absolutely.
the Capital
Yes,
Markets and
yes,
Stock
yes.
Exchange in South
Yeah.
Africa.
Right.
Thanks for that, Dr. Maduna.
Thanks very
Richard,
much.
I'd like to come to you because you are our go-to numbers guy, if I'm not mistaken. And if we think about those figures, 14 billion rand in value that's being created is not something to scoff at, right? But give us your reflections in terms of these calculations and the evaluation of the past performance of SAB Zenzele specifically as to what some of the key contributors to this financial success was.
So you're right. I mean, it's a large amount of money, and I think like any BE scheme, the underlying shares in the scheme need to appreciate in value, right? If that doesn't happen, fundamentally schemes really do struggle, and we've seen that with other companies. So we were very fortunate that SAB performed as a company over the 10 years that the scheme was in place. But to be honest, our belief is the reason the company performed so well was because we created a truly broad-based scheme with all of our retailers, all of our employees participating, and understanding that their hard work, their success, would breed the success of SAB. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. So that alignment between our customers, our retailers, our very valued customers, our valued employees, and that that drive to make sure that SAB succeeded as a business resulted in everyone ultimately succeeding to a great degree. And we really hope that with SAB Zenzele Kabili, and we are repeating that kind of magic muti, as it were, and we're hoping that over the next 10 years and even longer in time to come, we see the same success.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to it and continuing with the life-changing efforts that have been implemented. And maybe that's a beautiful reminder for all of us to remember the meaning behind the words, actually. Zenzele actually means to do it for yourself, to be proactive, and take the charge in terms of growing your wealth. And Kabili means to do it again or do it twice over. So that really speaks to the kind of efforts and the legacy that we're learning from SAB Zenzele that we're carrying into SAB Zenzele Kabili. And Duncan, this is where I want to throw the question at you regarding the legacy and the learnings and the insight that's been gained from SAB Zenzele. What are some of those and how will they be applied to this new scheme that will launch at the end of this month, being Zenzele Kabili?
We're very proud of what SAB Zenzele has done in terms of delivering value for our shareholders, and we really want to continue that legacy for our shareholders. One of the elements we've looked to improve is moving away from an SAB operation and looking to broaden that shareholding scope for our shareholders, and that's achieved through SAB Zenzele moving from the performance of SAB, and now the underlying asset will be AB InBev shares. So our retailer shareholders will have access to our global beer maker AB InBev, as Dr. Maduna said. And this is a great opportunity for our retailer shareholders to see real value and be able to track their value live on the JSE. So they'll have transparency of their price. They'll also have liquidity from day one. They'll be able to trade out as they wish. Obviously, we want them to grow that tree together with us over the long term, as Florence put it. But they do have the opportunity to exit if they so choose. And as they exit, they then bring in the broader public that we'll look to create this opportunity for. So the South African public will be able to participate. And in terms of accessibility, the initial listing price will be at 40 Rand per share. And we think that is a real opportunity for people to have access.
Help us understand the maths there. That's quite discounted in comparison to where the AB InBev share price is actually listed at on the stock exchange, right?
So AB InBev generally trades around 1,000 Rand a share. The underlying asset that Kabili will hold will be 5.4 billion Rands worth of AB InBev shares. But to enable access, we have obviously issued additional Kabili shares, and at a lower value. We've also facilitated that through free shares and loan funding to prop up this entity, and we think that really creates an opportunity for the broader public to come in and buy shares at 40 Rand or wherever it may trade from there. We hope the sky's the limit in that regard. But you won't have to reach into your pocket for 1,000 Rand to get access to the world's biggest beer maker.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
I think it's important just to note that you shouldn't link the 40 Rand to the 1,000 Rand. They're two separate companies. So the 40 Rand is so that it's accessible to people. You can buy 100 shares at 40 Rand. To trade 100 shares at 1,000 Rand, you obviously need 100,000 Rand. So the lower share price makes it more affordable for people, but you shouldn't think that you're buying an asset that's worth 1,000 Rand for 40 Rand.
We're owning a portion of it, right?
Correct. They're separate companies. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just important to clarify that.
Important to clarify, and that's why we're having this conversation here today, to engage on such matters, right? So if there is anyone who perhaps has some feedback on this or additional questions, do feel free to continue sharing your questions with us in the chat facility. Well, Richard, to come back to you, as you mentioned, it's important for us to understand the difference between the ownership of AB InBev versus a share in Zenzele Kabili. But I do want to get your feedback in terms of the numbers that we're looking for here. Duncan did mention that once this is listed on Zenzele Kabili on the JSE, the BEE board of the JSE, it will be open to the large public and majority at large. But if we reflect on the numbers from Zenzele specifically, we got about 40,000 shareholders there. How are we looking to see this number increase exponentially with Kabili?
So I think over time, as you point out, we really hope that the qualifying public do participate and buy shares and join us on this journey, as well as our retailers who weren't involved in the original SAB Zenzele scheme. But in terms of actual numbers, we had, you're right, approximately 40,000. We had roughly 10,000 employees. At the time, we owned the Coke business in South Africa, so we had a lot of Coke employees as well. That business has subsequently been sold. And so we're hoping that the 30,000 retailers that were involved in the original SAB Zenzele vote in favor of this deal and will participate in the new deal. And we have about 5,500 to 6,000 employees, which will be participating again by way of an ESOP as part of Kabili. So initially, we have about 35,000 employees. And we obviously hope over time, as people trade in and out of the stock, that number grows to include the general public.
Well, we certainly hope so, but we will come to the voting criteria that you mentioned, because this does lead to an AGM and, of course, the conversations and voting that current shareholders will have to do in order to see the successful launch of Zenzele Kabili. But we'll get into that in just a moment, where Duncan will give us all the details that we need to be mindful of. Well, if you're wondering, for those of you who missed out on the launch and the rally of SAB Zenzele in 2010, you don't want to miss out this time around. And Dr. Maduna, you mentioned lives being changed earlier, and I want to throw this back at you for those shareholders and participants who might be watching today and might be slightly skeptical about reinvesting in Zenzele Kabili. Share your words of encouragement as to why that would be a convenient, or rather a decision that should be fairly easy to make.
Well, first and foremost, being part of the largest beer making group on earth is a very wise investment, because as the AB InBev share grows in value internationally, the value of your own SAB Zenzele Kabili share grows. So you grow with the international group exponentially. It's a very, very important investment for you. But secondly, you, through this avenue, become a participant in our own economy at the level of ownership of shares, which might not have been the case when some of us were much younger. So here is an opportunity to grow in this economy of ours, as well as in the world economy. So your shares operate at those two levels immediately, at the local South African level as well as at the world level. I would indeed encourage all of us to participate in the new scheme, because through the new scheme, or through the new avenue, growth is going to be even bigger than we generated over the last 10 years from 2010. It must be 11 years now.
Yep.
But thanks to the intervention of COVID-19, we still talk about 10 years. So if we could succeed, as we surely did, as SAB Zenzele, I want to believe that the success, both in our economy and in the world economy, is going to be phenomenal.
I like your confidence, Dr. Maduna, and of course, words of encouragement there to shareholders to participate in Zenzele Kabili in order to take and broaden the opportunities for many more South Africans to participate in this new venture. Well, Richard, I do want to come back to you because you are the numbers man, right? Just to help us understand and elaborate a lot more about the investment case, right? Because we are speaking to a broad audience of members of the investment community, some quite au fait and familiar with the investment opportunities, and others who are still learning. But remind us again of why this makes such a compelling investment case to current SAB Zenzele shareholders to participate and the South African public broadly once Kabili comes on board, for them also to take advantage of that opportunity.
Sure. Thanks, Gugu. So I think the starting point really is the underlying investment. The underlying investment is AB InBev Global Shares. It's been mentioned already. We obviously believe very, very passionately that AB InBev will perform over time as a global business, that participates in multiple markets across the world. So it's a very good underlying business, which we are a part of at SAB. It is also a share price that's denominated in euros. So it's a natural hedge in terms of foreign exchange devaluation, should that come. And we think that over time, given the interest differentials, that we will see the rand devaluing sadly against the euro. So those are the two very important fundamental reasons for the underlying business. But in order to make this a compelling investment case, we've also provided free shares. So for every R1 invested by the Zenzele shareholders, we will provide 50 cents of free shares to Zenzele Kabili. In addition, we provided vendor funding to the amount of R1.83. So each shareholder that participates and contributes R1 is getting 50 cents of free shares on day one, and is also getting vendor funding at attractive rates. And this vendor funding is quite typical for BE schemes. The percentage is quite low at 55% of the total scheme size, and at very attractive rates. So it's 70% of prime. And the debt will be serviced through the dividends that are declared by AB InBev. 75% of those dividends go to the debt, and 25% will go to the shareholders from day one as well.
And that's important, I guess, for the shareholders to be aware of, that this is not necessarily debt that you are incurring, but it's been taken care of in the structure of the scheme and how it's been deployed. So as you put down your R1, you're not owing anyone anything. In fact, you're actually getting more bang for your buck, right?
Correct.
Fantastic. With the 50 cents discounted or rather free share, and of course, R1.83 in loan funding. Have I got my numbers right? R1.83. There we go. Fantastic. Well, we've been making mention of the fact that we've seen significant success from SAB Zenzele in the last 10 years. And I, for one, unfortunately, missed out on that growth. Unlike Florence and Maria, who we'll hear from in a moment or two, I unfortunately was not a retail investor, but we can change that, specifically for the current investors of SAB Zenzele, who can now vote to actually ensure that Zenzele Kabili does officially take place, will officially be launched and listed on the B-BBEE board of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So what we want to find out is when this voting will take place, how the voting is actually collated, and of course, making sure that the broader interest of the South African public is also prioritized with the launch of Zenzele Kabili, so that myself and Dr. Maduna and other qualifying South Africans can actually participate. Duncan, you're the man with the numbers, the dates, the facts, the figures, and the details about how the voting takes place. Give us more details.
Perfect. We're currently asking our retailer shareholders to vote on the scheme of arrangement. The scheme of arrangement meeting will be on the 10th of May at 10 o'clock. We're encouraging our retailer shareholders to vote via proxy before that meeting. They can do that by downloading our SAB Zenzele Kabili app, which is available on the iStore and the Google Play Store, or they can vote via USSD, which is SMS response on *120 *44222#. Or they can email or fax us the physical forms that we've posted to them to have their say. So importantly, we need our retailers to participate in these difficult times. It's not always easy to come together, and we're encouraging them through as many platforms as possible to participate in that scheme. And ideally, when they approve that scheme, we will be able to list SAB Zenzele Kabili on the JSE on the 28th of May 2021, and then all qualifying persons will be able to purchase shares through the usual channels, through a JSE broker, through any trading platform they may already use, or if they don't have a trading platform that they use, they can always call us on 0861 900 903, and we will assist them in purchasing SAB Zenzele Kabili shares.
Fantastic. Take that number, download it, save it, make sure it's an important contact that you have. And I think this really does offer us a lot of clarity in terms of the voting that needs to take place and the easy avenues that you've allowed for voting to take place with minimal stress, easy digital work, and at no expense, right? Everyone's just sitting comfortably at home and able to actually send through their voting outcomes.
100%. They can stay in their outlets and their taverns and run their businesses and participate electronically and digitally in the meeting, and ideally come along with us in this journey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think we're managing to build up the sense of excitement, but of course, we'll continue with that in a moment once we address more questions that will come from the members of the media and, of course, some of our retail investors who are here and watching. But as we give our team a virtual round of applause for having given us some insight, Duncan, Dr. Maduna, as well as Richard, we'll keep them here because we actually want to reflect again on some of the phenomenal investors who've really reaped the rewards of staying invested in SAB Zenzele.
Sanbonani Dumelani, mina nguMaria Nkosi. I come from Davidson, nginebhotli store. Kuthi irep yeyafika yasidirector ukuyalibele yasitshela ukuthi iZenzele yenza kanjani. Nami ke ngabona ukuthi nongcono ngijoyine iZenzele, ngathola ukuncedakala eZenzele. I get the money to Zenzele. Zenzele, it's helped me about money to, I must buy a car and I put in more stock than before. My stock now is grown. No, ngoba ibhotli store beyivaliwe ngama-closing, but mina ngemali yaseZenzele incedile, bengaboni ukuthi kuvaliwe. Ngemali yeZenzele incede kakhulu. Angincede ukuthi ngithenge imoto nokukhuphula isitoko sami. Manje sengiyakwazi ukukhuphula isitoko more than that ngithenga ngayo. Phambili ngezenzele kabili phambili. I'm still joining again. Because I see the different things, a lot of things, Zenzele, you make it for me. I don't forget about Zenzele. Zenzele Kabili izonenzela different 2021. Please come to vote Zenzele Kabili. Nizobona changes. Phambili ngezenzele phambili. Going forward, Zenzele, going forward.
SAB Zenzele Kabili, coming in May 2021.
Well, you've heard from one of the beneficiaries or participants in the SAB Zenzele retail shareholders. That was Maria Nkosi, who gave us her view and shared her outcomes in terms of the growth and the benefits that she reaped from participating in SAB Zenzele. Now, this is certainly a story that many South African SAB retail investors can actually share. And for many South Africans who going forward who would like to participate in SAB Zenzele Kabili will have the opportunity to participate in. But of course, that voting will have to take place in the upcoming days. But as promised, We are gathered here on this virtual platform to make sure that we can engage, we can share some insight, and most importantly, that you can also interact with us by sharing some of your questions. So right here on this hop-in platform, some of you have already posed your questions using the chat facility, but we also want to enlighten you on the fact that there is an opportunity for you to actually speak to us directly, given the world of technology that we live in. And this is where you can use your screen share feature or share screen feature, which is at the top right hand of your screen. Now, unlike other platforms where you'd ordinarily share documents, this will essentially switch on your camera and we will be able to virtually engage with you, see you, and answer some of your pertinent questions. So let's get right to it, gentlemen. I think there's a lot of eager investors, right, who are keen and eager to find out what's happening, how does this unfold, and how they can actually continue to participate, specifically when it comes to the voting. And we've got our first question from Simtandile Ndombela, who's added a question to the chat service, and we'll take that now. Simtandile's first question asks, firstly, sorry if we might have touched on this, who is the qualifying public? Is it those who are already part of the scheme? What platform should potential shareholders use to buy? Duncan, threefold question there. Let's start off with the qualifying public.
Qualifying public is Black persons in terms of the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act. So anyone in the broader public that qualifies as a Black person in terms of that act can trade and buy into our scheme going forward once we list on the JSE on the 28th of May.
Those who have already participated in Zenzele, are they the only individuals allowed to participate in Zenzele Kabili?
So we're asking our retailer shareholders to roll forward some of their value into the transaction, and we will be launching the new employee scheme as well as included in that transaction. And then once we list, we hope that anyone wanting to buy in can then buy into the SAB Zenzele Kabili on any platform they may already use. There are multiple trading platforms that you can use nowadays. Easy Equities, most of the large banks now offer those sort of trading options for their customers. So we would encourage qualifying persons, Black persons in terms of the B-BBEE Act, to participate and come and join us in this new scheme.
Looking forward to that. Thank you so much for that response, Duncan. There is another question that we have from Simtandile. It asks, either the value of the shares is 40 Rand versus 1,000 Rand. What other differences are there between the two companies? And Richard, you alluded to this earlier on, right? That we shouldn't mistake the 40 Rand in comparison to 1,000 Rand as entrance into the AB InBev share price specifically.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the difference between the two companies is SAB Zenzele Kabili will be listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the empowerment section, and it will effectively have a single asset, which is AB InBev shares. It will also have some debt, as I mentioned, so it's vendor funding. So it will have 5.4 billion rands worth of AB InBev shares, and it will have approximately 3 billion rands worth of vendor funding as well. So the difference between owning a Kabili share and an AB InBev share, and that's why there's a different price for each of those. An AB InBev share is a pure AB InBev share. There's no vendor funding attached to it. The Kabili share is listed on the empowerment section of the JSE and does have vendor funding or debt attached to it. And that is the only difference. So the AB InBev shares are AB InBev shares. Kabili owns those shares, will be able to vote with those shares, will participate in any dividends, will participate in any corporate actions that happen. But there is the vendor funding that is attached to it as well. And that is why it is in a separate company listed on the JSE.
Makes sense. And SAB Zenzele Kabili specifically, another difference with qualifying participants, right? As Duncan mentioned, anyone who falls under the definition of broad-based Black South Africans in the country. Whereas AB InBev, anyone really has an opportunity to invest there.
So that is correct, yeah.
Fantastic. We have another question from a familiar name, Arthur Goldstuck. His question is, will a mobile platform or app be provided to make it easier for anyone with a cell phone to access, perhaps zero-rated? Arthur, is this in terms of the voting or in terms of trading? So I think maybe let's address that question twofold, perhaps, right? Specifically as it is regarding a platform.
Yes.
So as a platform at the moment, the SAB Zenzele Kabili app is available for download for free. All the content on that site is zero-rated, so our participants can go and view the content, understand what will be going on. They will be able to vote on that via that app as well, and we are encouraging them to do that as much as possible. At this stage, that is not a trading platform as yet. You know, I don't think we would launch our own trading platform from a practical perspective, just because the broader public have so many options available to them at the moment. But we would encourage them to call us on our call center if they do need assistance in being able to access SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, and we will facilitate that for them.
Fantastic. That is an opportunity that is important for us to bear in mind, specifically for the current retail investors to actually vote. This is before the 10th of May, right, Duncan?
Correct.
Fantastic, to make sure that the launch of Zenzele Kabili does take place and will have the ululating as we once witnessed at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We have another question that's come through from Jenny. She asks, what are the main differences between SAB Zenzele and Zenzele Kabili? Richard, I'm aware that you touched on this very briefly in terms of the opportunity and the access and exposure, but I guess remind us and give us a refresher as to how Kabili will be different from the initial launch.
Sure. I think the main difference is the underlying asset. So SAB Zenzele, the underlying asset was SAB shares. SAB Zenzele Kabili, the underlying asset will be AB InBev global shares. So that's the main difference between them. An important difference we believe, and the reason we've decided to go with AB InBev global shares and the listing on the JSE, a very important difference also is that SAB Zenzele Kabili will now have an asset that is a publicly traded share, very transparent pricing. You can go onto many platforms to understand what the value of the asset is. And SAB Zenzele Kabili will also be listed on the JSE, which provides liquidity for the participants. Whereas previously with SAB Zenzele, you know, the participants, although they did very, very well, they had to be very, very patient, to be honest. You know, they waited 10 years before their payout. They participated in dividends, but for the 9.7 billion rand payout, they had to wait 10 years. And we've worked hard with the unions, with all stakeholders, to create liquidity and transparency around pricing, which is a huge improvement, we believe, in the new scheme.
Very important element there. Dr. Matuna, we've kept you quiet for a little bit too long, and I do want to throw in a question perhaps that some of the audience members might be thinking about as we wrap up. But as you mentioned earlier, we are focusing on broader economic growth. We are focusing on changing society and allowing more growth to take place. But there are some concerns in the market regarding the recent lockdown conditions we've witnessed in South Africa and how that might have impacted growth opportunities specifically for AB InBev. How do we reassure investors that this short-term change in terms of legislation to operations in South Africa does not necessarily depict future growth opportunities for AB InBev?
Firstly, let us acknowledge that the consequences of the pandemic and the lockdown, right, were unavoidable. Let's accept that. And a lot of businesses, small and big, were in trouble. But the South African economy, as well as the world economy, are not tanking. Instead, pretty soon we will begin to see growth in our economy and in the economy of the world. Right. And therefore, we are looking, if you like it, at a moment of takeoff. But over time, we will be in full flight as an economy and as the world economy. Right. So if you want to be part of that flight, the moment to buy a ticket, stand in some short queue, hopefully, and board the flight is now, because you are then having an advantage of being part of that takeoff. I am certain myself that the world economy, part of which is our own economy, is not tanking. There will be a rise in the economy, and we all want to be part of those processes.
Yeah.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I think you've put out a very great analogy there, Dr. Maduna. There's something else you'd like to add, sir?
In fact, all of us have children. And all of us, or some of us, now have grandchildren. Imagine that you participate in the SAB Zenzele Kabili scheme once it has been launched. You are beginning to build generational wealth. If you leave your shares intact, doesn't matter what happens to you when the grim reaper intervenes, doesn't matter, because generations beyond you will be owning those shares. So buy them now, let them grow for your future generations. It's a good investment and it's a good asset that you impart to future generations.
Yeah.
In other words, this is an opportunity for all of us to participate in wealth accumulation.
Yeah.
And wealth accumulation in the normal business sense of the word. You don't have to be a thief, a tenderpreneur, and whatever. Here, walking through the front door, buy shares as the scheme takes off. I guarantee that you won't regret the decision.
Certainly will not regret the decision. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Maduna. I think you've mentioned something so important in terms of the long term, and hence it's not a in and out or just a trading platform, but really an opportunity for one to see long-term growth as this economy as well as businesses do open up, business resumes as per normal, and we find new opportunities to see business growth. Well, I'm excited to see that more of your questions have come through, and we'll certainly take them both from Tando Mayeko. Tando Mayeko from MoneyWeb asks, how much value does SAB expect to be transferred to shareholders who will join the Zenzele Kabili scheme? So I'm assuming that's the current retail shareholders in SAB Zenzele. How much value will be transferred to those shareholders who will then join the Zenzele Kabili scheme? Richard?
I'm happy to answer.
Yep. Okay, sure, go ahead.
So our existing retailer shareholders have just over R1 billion worth of remaining entitlement from SAB Zenzele at the moment, and we're asking them to invest 63.5% of that remaining entitlement into Kabili. That will be just over 600 million rand. The balance of those funds, they then have a discretion to either top up their SAB Zenzele Kabili investment or take that out in AB InBev shares, as was originally intended in terms of the settlement of the transaction, or we will facilitate the sale of their AB InBev shares and distribute the cash to them if they so choose. So they can make those elections again on the Kabili app or by filling in the physical forms, which we'll encourage them to do before the 10th of May.
Please, before the 10th of May. We also have another question from Asanda Zondi from Kaya FM. She asks, please take us through the process of buying again. I would assume this might be related to SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, given that those will be the ones that will be available publicly. Richard, are you able to give us a run through?
Yeah. So as Duncan mentioned, the SAB Zenzele Kabili shares will be listed immediately on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So there are multiple platforms that people can access to buy shares. As Duncan mentioned, we have all of the major banks who offer share trading accounts. So if you do have a bank account, you can speak to your relationship manager or your bank, and they can help you set up an account. And there are other platforms that if you would prefer to use those, we can guide you to. And again, you should just call the SAB Zenzele Kabili hotline, and we will point people in the right direction. So it's not a simple matter, but it is a matter of acquiring shares through the official stock exchange. And the best place to start, to be honest, is probably through your bank.
Through your bank, perfect. Or whichever trading platform you might be comfortable with at the moment and making use of to already find yourself with exposure to the market. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today. I think we've really done our best to share some insight with many of our guests and participants who've joined us here today. I must say to those of you who are retail investors, please do make sure that you vote for the official launch of Zenzele Kabili, not only opening up new opportunities for yourself and your future generations in terms of wealth creation, but broadening and increasing the slice of the pie for many more qualifying Black South Africans to participate in this particular investment opportunity. I know the ululating and the kudu horn blowing took place last year at the JSE, but fingers crossed, in a world where we don't live under a pandemic again, we certainly hope that we can experience such lively activity once more. I do want to thank and extend our appreciation to our participants here today, Dr. Madonna, Richard, and Duncan. Thank you so much for enlightening us with so much information. And I'm sure that, as mentioned, you are still available to take on any other calls or questions that might come up from our retail investors. We'd also like to thank you, our distinguished guests, for participating this morning in all our formalities and, of course, addressing many more of your questions. Now, we certainly look forward to walking this journey with you as we carry the legacy of SAB Zenzele and its transformative action that has been implemented in the past. We look to put this forward and to continue with the powerful empowerment story into the next decade with the launch of SAB Zenzele Kabili worth 5.4 billion in AB InBev shares. Well, now is certainly the time for SAB to extend that opportunity to you, fellow South Africans. As a South African public, you will be able to buy SAB Zenzele Kabili shares, provided that you meet the qualifying shareholder criteria. As mentioned earlier, that is anyone who falls under the definition of broad-based Black South Africans under the legislation as well as the law as previously defined. Now, shares will be available to purchase through existing trading platforms and stockbrokers, and transactions will be able to be facilitated through the SAB Zenzele Kabili call center. Now, should the scheme be voted in by the SAB Zenzele retail shareholders at the live special AGM set to be held next week, Monday, the 10th of May, it is scheduled to be listed on the B-BBEE segment of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange on the 28th of May. So these are very critical and important dates for us to be mindful of. So please do jot them down in your calendar and be sure to follow up with these activities and, of course, an understanding of when the listing will take place. But if you'd also like to share your thoughts and your sentiments around the new share scheme or network with other esteemed members of the media, this particular platform that we're on today does allow us to engage and has a network function right here on Hop-In. There are breakaway rooms for smaller sessions where a 2-minute networking facility has been set up for you. So engage. Talk to some of the retail investors about their experiences. Speak to some of your colleagues in the media about the full detail and understanding of this particular investment scheme. And most importantly, you can also do that perhaps over a drink, responsibly though. Well, we also want to allow you, ladies and gentlemen, to, again, we extend our thanks to your time and for your time and participation here today, giving us the opportunity to share this exciting news as we not only hope to change the landscape of the country in expanding economic opportunities for those who are previously disadvantaged, but most importantly, changing the trajectory of wealth creation for Black South Africans and future generations. We thank you so much for your time once more for participating with us this morning. My name is Gugulethu Mfuphi, and I've enjoyed this morning and certainly had the pleasure and privilege of being in your company. Until we meet again, on behalf of SAB Zenzele, we ask that you keep safe, take care, and happy investing.